So now let's go over and look at the side panel here. So this is the display on this model. You'll notice that it's telling me I should have a J foot, which I'll talk about in a bit. I'm actually on the first set of stitches, 0, 1. It tells me the width of my stitch. And this machine is all in millimeters. We're going to go through and change it to imperial in a minute. So that means the width of my stitches is 0, so it's doing a straight stitch. The length is a default, 2.5. And you can actually shift your needle to the left or to the right. And this is primarily for quilters who like to have a scant 1/4 inch. And my tension is auto set at 4.0, which is usually what you want. Now with this model, there's some really good options. You can actually have it default to have the foot stop up or stop in the down position. I can have it automatically do a reverse stitching at the beginning, and I can also program in to cut when I hit the end of a row of stitching. So let's take a look at the defaults in this machine. There are 10 pages of this, and there's many things that we can do. We can have the width control actually governed by the width of the stitches as opposed to this. And here's where we want to just do some fine tweaking. I would recommend that you don't touch those at this point. We can even sew with twin needles. So in my level 2 sewing, we actually experiment with those. Go to the next page. My presser foot is standard width. The pressure on the presser foot is at a 3. So these are all defaults. Initial position. All Brother machines default to the left, all Japanese machines. If you like to have your needle in the center, which I do, that means whenever I turn on my machine now, it'll be in the center and not left justified. I can also set it so that the needle always stops in the down position or the up position. So pivoting height, that's when you get to the end of a seam and you want to pivot, say 90 degrees. How high do you want your pressure foot to go? Free motion foot. Now when you're doing free motion, you have 3 layers. You have your backing, your batting, and your top. Your pressure foot should be a little higher to go over those 3 layers. So reinforcement priority. So this would be really good if you're doing heavy denim, you're making jeans, bags, that you need to have a reinforcement on there. So this is an embroidery module, so we're not going to talk about this. We discussed that in our embroidery introductory class. Obviously you can specify which type of thread you want to use, how fast. More embroidery, I'm just going to skip over those. Here's we're going to change it to imperial. There we go, I've just changed it to inch. If you want to go back, go to millimeters. I find that most of my students like to have it in an inch. Next, I can default the position up or down. Buzzer. If you like your machine talking to you, as you can see that this machine is, you can hear that beep. So when you get a class of 8 machines talking to you, it can get quite annoying. Opening machine, most brothers that have the embroidery module have an opening screen to with it. You can actually turn it off. You can change the language you want. I strongly suggest you don't do that. I've had students that change it into a language that I have no idea, and we can't get back into it. Light, obviously you want to have your light on. So if you're working with a darker fabric, so I'll turn it on, you may want to have your light off. Say you're using glow-in-the-dark thread. And then input sensitivity. That's the sensitivity you have on here. You want to make sure that when you're tapping on your screen that you're not banging on it. I unfortunately had one student who actually punched a hole in her screen because she was hitting it so hard. So you want to make sure that you go through the sensitivity. And this just tells me how many stitches I have and what version it is. If you bring in your machine for updating and there is a new version, you'll see the new number here. So this is a good way to know how many stitches that you have. We're done now? Okay, we're going to continue on in millimeters with this machine. So if we take a look at some of the other things that are on here, so we've gone through all of the things on the screen here. If I hit the arrows, so this goes to my left, to my right, I'm actually changing the stitches. So you see this is a blind hem. You'll see all kinds of different stitches in here. A lot of these stitches are wonderful for applique that we'll do in our second level sewing. Okay, there's a little free motion one. These stitches, you'll notice that they're all prefixed with a 1. So if you come up to here, you'll notice this has a 1. So this is your quick reference guide. Everything in 1 is here. Everything that has a 2 is in here. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So this machine has a huge number of decorative stitches. And in order to access those, what you'll want to do is press this key on here. Here's the prefix 1, 2, 3. So if I wanted to go to one of these stitches up here, so let's say this is number 2 up here, 3, which is a blanket stitch. So now I'm going to hit number 2, and you'll see number 3. Now my machine is programmed to do a blanket stitch, which is very nice for applique. And if you want to go back to your regular stitch, so I want to go back into the regular stitch, it'll ask you, is it okay to cancel? Just say yes or okay. Now I can go back to 1. And I'm pick on the left justified stitch. Now when you look at this, you will notice that there's 2 little stitches here. That means it's going to do stitch forward and back, so it's doing a reverse. Number 2 only has a dot. That means it's going to do a tack stitch or stitch in place, then go. Now if I go to 3, it actually center justifies my needle. It'll do the reverse and then go. Number 4 will do the tack stitch or stitch in place and go. So we typically use 1 to 4 in piecing, for quilting, for garment sewing. So that's basically all our stuff on here. Okay.